Leave it to Attorney General Pam Bondi and a new federal filing to completely undercut everything Donald Trump is telling the public, desperately telling the public to make them stop asking questions about the Epstein files. She just totally undercut his entire political rhetoric because, they had to file it in court to try to get the quote unquote grand jury transcripts. And here's the new revelations based on the filings. I'll break down for you. Michael Popok here on the MeidasTouch Network and Legal AF. One, she tells a federal judge, Judge Engelmeyer, in her filing that the public is demanding the release of the Epstein files because it's of great public importance. She also concedes that the great public importance was basically caused by her own 2-page attempt to close out the case with a closeout memo from July the 6th, undated and unsigned, that drove MAGA crazy. And that's the reason there's so much public interest. The more Donald Trump doesn't want public interest, the more the public is interested. So that's the first thing that undercuts the argument of Donald Trump. Remember, he always says it's boring details. Child sex trafficking charges against 2 of his best friends are boring details. Nothing to see here. You must be from a failing paper. Isn't there better things to cover? All those things he says as he's trying to golf with the Secret Service dropping his ball into each hole as he's trying to golf in Scotland to get away from the Epstein scandal that continues to follow him because he says stupid confessions out loud like, I'm mad at Epstein because he stole my young girls from the spa. And now we've got the filing. I got it right here in my hand. And the second revelation that completely undercuts their argument that the grand jury transcripts represent all of the Epstein files and we're trying to get them for you, right? Like some sort of transparency, is the fact that they have to admit in their filings to Judge Engelmeyer in New York that there's nothing in the grand jury filings. He's handling it. There's 2 judges in New York. One of them is Engelmeyer. He deals with everything related to Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, because he took over from another judge named Nathan. There's another judge, Judge Berman. He has been the Epstein grand jury and other judge since the beginning. They both issued orders saying, we're not ready to release the grand jury materials. Tell us why you need it. File a brief. Give us a proposal. Talk to Maxwell and talk to the victims. And we'll come together next week and figure it out. Okay. Another judge in Florida, Judge Rosenberg, has already rejected getting the grand jury materials out of Florida. There was an Epstein grand jury in Florida. That was Judge Rosenberg. Here's the undercut by Pam Bondi. Why? Why is she undercutting Donald Trump's entire argument? Because it's not true. Because when they finally have to put pen to paper and file it in federal court, they got to sort of tell the truth. They start with a lie. When you look at what they have filed, on the front cover of what they have filed, here it is. We'll blow it up, but it's side by side. It says this brief is being filed by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton. And under Jay Clayton, they say he's the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's not. He's the interim U.S. Attorney, acting interim U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York because he hasn't been confirmed. And what's his claim to fame? Who are all these people? They're all best friends of Donald Trump. Jay Clayton was Donald Trump's Securities and Exchange Commission chair back in the first term and is a golfing buddy of Donald Trump. Trust me, he's a golfing buddy of Donald Trump's. Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, former impeachment and criminal defense lawyers for Donald Trump. So that's who's filing these briefs. So, they're close to Trump. They're buddies, and that's their client. So then why do they have to reveal that there's nothing in the grand jury materials? Did you hear me right? Remember when they said they want to redefine the Epstein files as the grand jury material? The witness statements, the testimony, whatever's in the box. That for them is the grand jury, is the Epstein files. Of course, we know better, and we're demanding more. The Epstein files are not just the grand jury. There's nothing in the grand jury, which they've now admitted. It's the truckload of documents, Pam Bondi's terms, that were searched and scoured for hours by FBI agents in March and April, so she could report to Donald Trump that his names, as he knew, were all over the Epstein files. It's the gigabytes of information. It's the search warrant results for Epstein and Maxwell and others. It's the victim statements. It's the financial records of the payments from Epstein and Maxwell to the victims. It is the flight records. It is video. It is audio. It is photographs. It's the results of what was in Jeffrey Epstein's safe. I feel like I'm doing Al Capone's safe with Geraldo Rivera. What was in the safe? It's that. That's the Epstein Files, okay? And they admit that there's nothing in the grand jury materials. In fact, they tell the court that there's effectively only 2 witnesses. You heard me right. 2 total witnesses who testified before 2 separate grand juries. That's it. And they were both law enforcement. All they were what we call in the business summary witnesses who were just summarizing the evidence. And so these witnesses were an FBI agent who testified in both Epstein and Maxwell grand juries, and a New York detective who worked on a joint task force with the feds who worked in human trafficking. That was it. 2 witnesses in the Maxwell grand jury, the FBI and the cop. 1 witness in the Epstein grand jury, the FBI agent. That's it. In fact, when they went for the judge and asked the judges to release the files, they didn't even ask to release the exhibits. Those are the documents, the evidence that was used in front of the grand jury. They didn't even ask for, they don't want that out. They want to so redefine in your mind what the Epstein file is that you'll forget about it. But you're not going to, because you're on the MeidasTouch network and we do hourly reports. This episode of Legal AF is brought to you by Moinkbox. Did you know 4 companies control over 80% of the U.S. meat industry, and that the largest share of U.S. pork is now controlled by China? These meat giants use mobster-like tactics to crush American family farms, flooding our food supply with sketchy additives and low-quality meat. So what can you do about it? Here's where Moink comes in. Featured on Shark Tank, Moink is standing up for family farms and your food security. Their meat comes from animals raised outdoors, like nature intended. Their farmers get an honest day's pay, and Moink delivers straight to your doorstep at a price you can actually afford. This is real American meat, born, raised, and harvested right here in the USA. Moink is helping save rural America. I love it, and you will too. Join the Moink movement today, support American family farms, and join the, wait for it, Moink movement today at moinkbox.com/legalaf right now and get free bacon for a year. That's 1 year of the best bacon you'll ever taste, but only for a limited time. Spelled MOINK. box.com/legalaf. That's moinkbox.com/legalaf. And so Judge Engelmeyer called them out. Here's the order. I'll read it to you. It says, effectively, I just read your filing today. This government's rationale for the grand jury, which I'm going to read to you in a moment. And it says, but you don't ask me squarely for the documents and the evidence. So if you want that, and I can't tell me that by Monday. Now here's how Pam Bondi completely screws Donald Trump in a number of ways. It says on page 4, top of page 4, that why, in section 3, why disclosure is being sought in this case. Here's what they say. As described above, there is undoubtedly a clearly expressed interest from the public in Jeffrey Epstein's and Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes. Beyond that, there is an abundant public interest in the investigative work conducted by the Department of Justice and the FBI into those crimes. Okay, let's stop right there. First of all, the public interest is in the files more than the crimes. And secondly, I wouldn't call what Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are doing investigations into those crimes or investigative work. But I will admit, I will concede to Pam Bondi that she has created a lot of interest that Donald Trump is trying to ignore. She goes on to say, attention given on page 5, attention given to the Epstein and Maxwell cases has recently intensified in the wake of the July 6, 2025 memorandum announcing the conclusions of the government's review into the investigation. So she admits that her 2-page memo, unsigned and undated, I'll put it up here, where she said that Epstein wasn't murdered and there is no witness list, so cleaned up and closed out the investigation, ignoring the truckload of documents right behind her. Right. Your memo fueled the flames, and Donald Trump trying to put them out is only blowing up in his face, especially when he says confessional things out loud, like the reason I broke up with my BFF Epstein, a sexual predator and pedophile, which I may not have known of at the time, but I didn't like the fact he was poaching young girls from my spa at Mar-a-Lago, like Virginia Giuffre, who committed suicide in April, by the way. Now, when you put all that together, this is the explanation as to why we want the full and complete Epstein files. The Senate is demanding it. They put together the Rule of Five, an ancient law on the books for Congress that allows 5 people on a committee that's responsible for oversight of a particular issue to demand records. It's like their subpoena power, even if the chairman of that oversight committee, who's a Republican, won't sign it. It's the Gang of Seven or the Rule of Seven in the House, and they're considering doing that too, led by Jamie Raskin. So you got Chuck Schumer and Jamie Raskin and the rest of the senators and Congress people for the Democrats all trying to hold Donald Trump accountable as Congress goes into recess. Now they got a problem because they want to be out of town, but then if they're out of town too long, they'll give Donald Trump recess power to appoint dozens and dozens of cabinet members and U.S. attorneys and ambassadors and other federal officers. I'm not sure they want that. So there's that other tension that's going on. But I love the fact in her filing, she undercuts and just cuts the leg. Like the sawing sound Donald Trump is hearing is Pam Bondi as he's on this long limb being sawed out from behind him. One, she admits there's nothing to see in the files, that the civil cases brought by the victims have revealed all their testimony. The criminal case against Maxwell revealed all their testimony. There's nothing new to see, and there's only 2 witnesses, and they're not even seeking the documents anyway. So there's nothing in the quote-unquote Epstein files that Donald Trump's trying to convince the public he's so diligently trying to release. And her other argument is the public demands the Epstein files. We agree, Pam Bondi. Release all of the Epstein files. Put them up on a website, the wall of receipts related to Epstein, and let everybody take a look. Just like you wanted to do with the Jan 6 closed-circuit TV videotape of the attack on the Capitol. For everybody to make a revelation, everybody to make their own conclusion. Here we go. People like their own facts. We'll give them their own facts. They can render their own conclusions. So that's where we are right now. That's the filing. There's going to be more filings on Monday. You know where to follow it. Legal AF here on the MeidasTouch Network, the podcast I co-founded with Ben Meisalas 5 years ago. We sit at that intersection of law, politics, and now you see why. Every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then we've got the new Legal AF YouTube channel, Legal AF YouTube, Legal AF MTN. 10, 12 new videos every day about these issues and, of course, more over on Legal AF that I curate. So my next report, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.